For 19 years, I was the quiet backbone of that company. Not the face, not the handshake, not the charm in the boardroom, but the one who made sure the lights stayed on, the deals stayed honest, and the numbers told the real story. I was the CFO. I knew every account, every secret, and every skeleton buried under polished spreadsheets and doctored quarterly reports. And I didn't just work for that company. I bled for it. But loyalty. Loyalty is a currency no longer accepted by the new generation of power-hungry egos and silver spoon sons. It happened on a Monday. Mondays are already cruel, but this one had venom. I walked into the office like I always did, coffee in hand, tie slightly loosened, only to find the elevator already filled with unfamiliar voices. Young, loud, reeking of privilege and cologne that cost more than my entire wardrobe. And in the middle of them, Brandon, the owner's son. He wasn't supposed to be back. Last I heard, Brandon had been finding himself in Europe after crashing 2 company cars and nearly bankrupting a startup his father begged me not to invest in. But here he was, laughing like he'd already won. At 10 a.m. sharp, I got the summons. Not from the CEO, from Brandon himself. "Hey champ, you mind popping into the boardroom real quick? Need your magic touch on some fiscal vision." I knew then. Instinct. After almost 2 decades, your gut becomes a second brain. I walked in, and it wasn't a meeting. It was an execution. The CEO sat there, eyes down. HR was there too. My resignation letter was already typed. All it needed was a signature. "We're restructuring," the CEO began. I looked at him, this man I once pulled out of a potential SEC scandal, avoiding my eyes like a guilty child. "Brandon will be taking over as Chief Financial Officer. We believe his modern approach might better suit our next phase." I said nothing. Not a word. I just stared at Brandon, his smug smirk, his cheap bravado. He didn't understand finance. He didn't understand discipline. He certainly didn't understand revenge. So I signed. I walked out with my jacket over one shoulder and a half smile on my lips. Not because I was defeated, but because they had just handed me the matchbook, and they didn't even know they were soaked in gasoline. I didn't rush into revenge. That's the kind of thing amateurs do. They burn bridges before building escape routes. I spent the next week doing nothing, at least on the surface. I went fishing, cleaned out my garage, took walks, reconnected with my son. But late at night, when the world went quiet, I opened my personal laptop and began tracing every weak spot I had quietly patched over the years. Every time Brandon's father ignored a risk I flagged, every compliance shortcut we barely got away with, every internal memo that shouldn't have been approved. See, I wasn't just the CFO. I was the fortress. I kept their secrets and their sins buried. And now those secrets had no keeper. Brandon had swagger but no substance. Within days of my departure, the finance department was in chaos. He started making moves, big, stupid, reckless ones. Terminated 3 senior analysts because they questioned his authority. Scrapped the internal audit process because it slowed things down. And worst of all, he redirected the company's largest investment portfolio into a flashy crypto fund that promised impossible returns. He was playing with fire in a room full of gas, and he had no idea the lighter was already in my hand. I called in a favor from an old friend, someone I once helped through a financial mess, someone who now worked for a firm that audited publicly traded companies. I didn't say much, just asked them to take a casual glance at a few numbers I had anonymously sent over from a dummy email. Numbers that revealed discrepancies in quarterly reporting and a few wire transfers that, let's just say, wouldn't look great if brought to light. 3 days later, word started spreading that the company might be heading for an unannounced audit. Suddenly, Brandon's office door was always shut. The energy shifted. My old colleagues started texting me, wondering if I knew something. I didn't answer. I was busy working on something else. You see, the company had one major client that made up almost 40% of its revenue, a logistics firm I helped bring in nearly a decade ago. The CEO of that firm? I saved his daughter from financial ruin once. He owed me, and more than that, he respected me. So I made a call. "I'm not saying you need to pull your account," I told him, "but If I were you, I'd start asking some tough questions about where your money's going. 2 days later, the contract was frozen. Brandon didn't even see it coming. And yet, I wasn't done, because revenge is best served slow, and I was just warming up. By the end of the month, Brandon was drowning. The audit became official. Investigators rolled in with briefcases and quiet, stern expressions. The kind of people who don't ask twice and don't need second opinions. Suddenly, the flashy crypto fund Brandon poured company money into, it turned out to be a glorified Ponzi scheme. Losses in the millions, untraceable accounts, no paper trail, no accountability. That's what happens when someone builds an empire on arrogance and illusion. The board panicked. Whispers started swirling through the halls I once walked. I heard from a former colleague that Brandon stopped showing up at the office. Rumor was his father flew in from the coast just to scream at him behind closed doors. Glass shattered. Security was called. It was beautiful. And then came the real storm. The client I quietly warned, they didn't just freeze their account. They pulled out entirely. And with them, others followed. Suppliers stopped extending credit. Investors demanded transparency. Stockholders began filing complaints. I watched it unfold like someone sitting in the last row of a burning theater. Calm, distant, almost at peace. And then one morning, 2 months after my termination, I received a knock on my door. It was Brandon. His confidence was gone. No tailored suit. Just jeans, dark circles under his eyes, and a face that had finally learned humility. He stood there for a few seconds, words stuck in his throat. Then he finally spoke. I didn't know it would fall apart this fast. I didn't say anything. He looked down at the floor like a scolded child. I thought it was going to be easy. Still, I stayed silent. I wasn't ready. I know that now. I didn't respect what you built, what you protected, and I'm sorry. That was the moment I saw it. Not just regret, but understanding. I let him talk for a few more minutes, and when he was done, I gave him only one thing. I didn't destroy it, Brandon. You did. I just stepped out of the way. He left without another word. 2 weeks later, the company filed for bankruptcy. Brandon's father stepped down, citing health reasons. The building I helped fill with dreams and numbers now stood hollow, a shell of arrogance and failed shortcuts. But me? I started fresh, consulting, selectively. I chose clients who listened, who understood the value of patience, integrity, and grit. I even began mentoring young professionals, ones who wanted to earn their place, not inherit it. I never gloated. I didn't need to, because true revenge isn't about destruction. It's about survival, and watching those who tried to bury you realize they handed you the shovel.